Hello, my name is Don Fleming, and I'm the Managing Director, Educational Initiatives and Policy at CASN. I'm happy to welcome all of you to this Lunch and Learn presented by CASN's Research and Scholarship Committee. The presentations in this series focus on use of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and intelligences and big data, implications for nursing research and education. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. CASN's national office is located on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region and in all regions across Canada. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. Lunch and Learns are a popular tool in academia to encourage scholarship. Faculty members come together during their lunch hour to share their work and to network. CASN's webinar series, again presented by the Research and Scholarship Committee, aims to recreate the collegial feel of the Lunch and Learn and is intended to serve as an inspiration and networking opportunity. Nursing faculty from across the country present on a scholarship project and discuss their methodologies, successes, or challenges they have encountered in their work. We'll be recording today's session and begin with a presentation from our speaker, and we'll conclude with a 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A after the presentation. And to submit a question, please use the chat function. And please note that CASN does not distribute the PowerPoint presentations. So in this session, we'll hear from Dr. Jae-Young Kwon from the University of Victoria, whose presentation is entitled From Machine Learning to Contextualizing the Person Using Patient-Reported Data, the Role of Nursing and Knowledge Translation. Dr. Kwon, thank you for presenting today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Don, for the introduction, and very excited to be here for the invitation, and thank you everyone for your time. And very excited to present the title of my research and summary up to date entitled From Machine Learning to Contextualizing the Person Using Patient-Reported Data. And I'm just going next slide. Since it's my first time presenting at CASN, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background to myself, my research program, and then go into some of the series of projects that I've been involved with in leading, including the machine learning study, the persona and the journey mapping project as part of the knowledge translation, and then conclude with some key takeaways and a few minutes of Q&A session at the end. So nursing had a profound impact on me both personally and professionally, and my path to nursing can be traced to my mandatory military service in the Korean Army, because I came out of this experience really wanting to help people and make a difference. And I volunteered in a hospital in South Korea and decided to pursue nursing and nursing school in British Columbia. And to say that from this experience, it was a bit of a culture shock, and that was a bit of an understatement where I was in a very male-oriented environment, and then moving overseas to a more female-oriented environment. And all my experiences have been documented in a book entitled Only Be in the Land of Flowers. And this opened up a lot of opportunities for me in terms of graduate nursing education and research, particularly focused on patient-reported outcome measures to hear the voices of those who are often overlooked. And given my background as a Korean male nurse, I'm acutely aware of the status of minorities, and it seemed appropriate to acknowledge the Lekwungen-speaking people, the land here in Vancouver Island, where I'm currently residing. There's a bit more detail about my background and my research website here. And on the side, I compose piano music for students to help reduce a bit of classroom anxiety and help more focus on classroom content. So getting back to my research, as mentioned, it focuses on patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs, which are self-reported questionnaires such as anxiety, depression, and well-being from the patient's perspective. And prompts have been shown to have great potential to better respond to patients' needs because they provide outcome information that are important to patients and that has been identified as needing to be provided for. However, based on a lot of the literature and as there's analysis of these patient-reported outcomes become more complex with the use of machine learning algorithms in the context of big data, there are huge gaps in translating the results of these analysis. And these are here, as shown figure, is machine learning algorithms that I've implemented in my studies. But these are not how healthcare providers and nurses communicate with each other or understand. And this is where I think nurses have a major role in terms of filling knowledge translation gaps for informing individual practice. And I'll demonstrate in terms of what I mean in a series of studies that I've led. This is a machine learning study where I examined patient-reported anxiety, depression, and well-being trajectories in patients with cancer using the Ontario Cancer Registry data. And this study focused on patients undergoing radiation therapy because there's a lot of anxiety and depression that changes throughout their treatment. However, most clinical and evaluation studies assume that there is one average trajectory and doesn't account for all the different outcomes that patients can have. And if you look at some of the background, there's all these individual variations where patients can start at very minimal, go up with severe, and go down. They could have minimal symptoms throughout, or all the different possible variations that is not necessarily accounted for. And the results of these analysis could be problematic because you would essentially be providing a one-size-fits-all solution and ignore patients who have different outcomes. So the main question the study examined was, are there multiple subpopulations with different trajectories of anxiety, depression, and well-being based on the Edmonton Symptom Assessment System questionnaire, known as the ESSR, which is commonly used in patients with cancer? And I use for research design the Ontario Cancer Registry data. And this is where patients who are diagnosed with cancer all come to have their information collected. And this was linked to administrative health data that included social demographic and health-related variables that provided a more comprehensive picture of the patient. And for analysis, I use what's called a latent class growth mixture model, which is a type of unsupervised machine learning that allows for the clustering of the patient-reported outcomes data into different patterns. And we'll see a visual of what this looks like. And when I ran the model, it was able to identify up to 4 different health trajectories. So in class 1, for example, there are some who had moderate symptoms with slight improvement. And class 2, there's some patients who started with minimal to moderate symptoms and having different diverse trajectories. You can see that anxiety increasing in severity, but others that could have that depression that had reducing. And others, for example, 3, where we have patients starting with very severe symptoms with substantial improvements, and other groups who have minimal symptoms that has been remaining stable over time. And these just demonstrate the important point here is that even though we know that there are more than one health trajectories that has been identified, you can still see some variation in some of these groups. So in the background in gray, there's some individual variations that has not been fully captured or represented in these subgroups. And so the question still remains, how do we translate these findings to inform the individual level interaction with the patients? And I think this is where nurses can provide a great contribution in terms of contextualizing these prompt data by asking deeper questions about the patient in the persona project that I will demonstrate here. For those who may not know, personas are hypothetical users that incorporate life stories, and they have typically been used in health informatics research to understand the user, in this case, patients, and they've been used in powerful design and communication tools. And I've used this in my previous research that have shown to be very engaging in terms of communicating with and discussion among different stakeholders. So this the personas were used in this context. And the aim of this persona project was to help healthcare providers understand how PROM's data relate to patient stories. And personas were used to provide engaging and relevant content to make these connections between PROM's data and patients' life stories. And for the method, there was a total of 8 older adults recruited with lived experiences of cancer. And there was a total of with 3 online workshops for 1.5 hours each. And during the interviews, participants completed the emotional well-being item and was asked to complete the emotional well-being and this was a widely used tool in cancer, the FACT-G. And to give more context to the well-being item, participants were asked why they responded. For example, a 2 for this particular item, and explain what they were feeling, what tasks they were completing, and what their social influences were, what their overall healthcare goal was, and some of the challenges in their healthcare encounter. And this is what's called as empathy mapping. That's typically used in persona development and health informatics to better understand the user and being able to connect when these personas are developed. And here are the 4 personas that were developed with the participants. And because this is a design tool, we've also been able to, our team has developed a whiteboard video for researchers on how the personas have been developed. And I'll show you a video of what this looks like.
This video will cover what a persona is, how personas can be used as PROM's teaching tools, and how to create personas. Personas refer to fictional representations of patients that combine demographic data and life stories. Personas are effective design tools for improving healthcare products and service as they identify the needs of particular populations. For example, Trish is a 71-year-old who is currently undergoing treatment for stage 3 uterine cancer. She has had multiple rounds of chemotherapy with mixed results. Trish wants more information about her treatment and is frustrated because her healthcare providers are not directly answering her treatment-related questions. Personas can also be educational tools for demonstrating the value of using PROMs in clinical practice. PROMs provide information that can inform patient-centered care. However, PROMs produce numeric scores that can be difficult to interpret. If Trish answers a 3 here, how is this information useful for healthcare providers? As a teaching tool for healthcare providers, the Trish persona demonstrates the benefits of incorporating PROMs into clinical practice. For example, PROMs can prompt providers to ask Trish about her responses, which will provide contextual information needed to better understand her unique life situation. Facilitate conversations that are attuned to Trish's emotional well-being needs. Contribute to developing the relationship between Trish and her provider. How do you create personas to be used as educational tools for PROMs? There are 5 key steps. 1. Identify your population of interest and a PROM that is used in that practice setting. 2. Identify themes that focus on the information you want to highlight in the personas, what they are thinking and feeling, what influences how the personas act, what their overall goals are, etc. 3. Conduct a workshop with participants from the population of interest and have the participants work together to develop personas that draw on their own healthcare experiences. 4. Have workshop participants complete the selected PROM from the perspective of the persona and ask them why each response was selected. 5. Fully develop the personas created by the workshop participants by fleshing out key themes informed by the workshop discussions.
So hope this clarifies a bit on how personas have been developed and their understanding of the personas. And the second knowledge translation initiative was that we developed a learning module and a series of scenarios based on the personas for healthcare providers and how to use PROMs in their practice. So in this case, this was a patient named Trish who is coming in responding to a questionnaire. What I worry that my condition will get worse as somewhat. So the healthcare provider will click on this image, what kind of information is needed to better understand Trish's worry. So just to give a bit of context to Trish, she is a 71-year-old diagnosed with uterine cancer, and she is currently in a treatment phase, wants to know everything that is going on about her diagnosis. She is currently divorced and lives alone. And one of the main goals is that she wants to maintain her quality of life. And the next is one of the key challenge is not getting enough information. So when in the interaction with the healthcare provider and Trish, it would be important for the healthcare provider to provide information about treatment and options that impact her quality of life, because that was identified as being important to her. And when we go more deeper into the conversations, we've also developed what an example of what kind of conversation may look like. So when the patient and healthcare provider dialogue, when Trish comes in with, I worry that my condition will get worse.
Trish, I see you're worried about your condition worsening. Tell me more about the worry.
Well, if my cancer gets worse, I'm afraid I won't be able to care for myself. This would not be good for my quality of life. I would rather have a shorter, healthier life than a longer life with poor quality.
Thank you for sharing. That's important for me to know. To make sure your cancer doesn't worsen, let's talk about your treatment options, possible side effects, and the effect on your quality of life.
Yeah, so we developed, we had a voiceover actors, and then see what kind of, and it was very, we all different, there were different iterations, and the type of voices that may be needed. So there's a lot of, it was really a team effort in terms of how we developed these learning modules. And after we developed this, this learning module has been developed as part of a training program for healthcare providers in British Columbia with very positive feedback during the post-survey on the interactive nature of this module. And the video that I've shown and also the link to the module, I can also provide separately in a chat. So this is, you can also access it freely available in the link below. The second knowledge translation project was a follow-up where our team was interested in looking at patients over time and their changing needs through journey mapping, rather than just at one point in time that we did with the Persona project. So this project has recently been awarded the New Investigator Award by the International Society of Quality of Life, which is one of the biggest conference in my research area. And we followed a similar method in terms of the recruitment strategy, and recruit for a total of 6 older adults. And because this involved getting more detailed information across the different phases, we had a very intensive 2-hour semi-structured interviews during the 4 phases of the cancer journey. And we used what's called a one-item well-being score from the ESSR, the symptom assessment questionnaire that is also commonly used in a cancer care setting. Here is just one example that I just wanted to highlight. It's Fiona's journey map. I'm not going to go too detail into each of these phases, but I did want to note when I highlight each of these phases that Fiona isn't doing too well during her cancer journey. And just some key highlights is that during pre-diagnosis, she's is feeling that she's confused because she's not expecting normal mammogram results. And during the diagnosis, she's feeling overwhelmed with medical information. And during treatment, she's feeling exhausted and not having adequate information about the side effects. And there's also seems to be other life activities and events, contexts, such as she's continuing to work and caring for her sick husband. And also during post-treatment, Fiona is feeling burned out and recognizes that she needs more support. And here is where I think that nurses can play a major role in terms of finding out patients' unique life situations and opportunities to support their evolving needs. And the most that our team has struggled with in creating these journey maps is the opportunities to discuss well-being section, because healthcare providers have often asked, what do we do with these information when patients are reporting low well-being score? And we've started with, when we created these, in initiating conversations and opening up, in establishing rapport, and quite asking questions to see where patients are at first. Because if we just provided education at the outset, patients could be overwhelmed with information, and it could take it could be a lot to take in, especially when patients are diagnosed with cancer. And this is what we did to open up the questions first, and for the rest of the sections, as you can see in both fonts. And then after assessing where patients are at, the nurse healthcare providers can provide education that is tailored to the individual needs.
Jim, do you see those a couple of comments about blurry slides? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you saw those comments?
Yeah, it seems to be blurry, but yeah, I'm not too sure if that's connection problem or if it's slides.
Right now, it's very clear. Right now, it's very clear.
Yeah. So based on some of the reflections and based on what after the projects have been underway, I think there's just some key takeaways and in terms of the nursing role and implications. There's only so much that machine learning algorithms can tell us to inform the individual level of practice, as shown in the analysis example, where it's very it's still like no matter how much the complex the machine learning algorithm gets, it's never going to tell us like the exact individual level of information, and it'll really be up to us as nurses to continue to use critical thinking and adopt inquiry-based approach and ask further questions about the data, what's missing, and how to adopt the results from the machine learning to our own individual practice. And that's some of the opportunities section that we try to highlight this. And this level of detail doesn't come from the machine learning. And it comes from our own assessment of the patient and opening questions for the patient. And all throughout the personas and the journey mapping, that's what our team has tried to highlight with example questions. The second point is contextualizing data from the patient perspective. And I think that nurses are in the key and best position to understand patients' unique life situation and being able to advocate for patients, which also will provide more visibility to nursing work. And the third point, which is probably the most difficult, is how do we cultivate more empathetic and individualized healthcare? The persona and the journey maps have really stemmed from patients themselves during the interviews and patient partners who we've have in our project team who have told us time and time again that they want to be treated as a person and not just a number. And their well-being needs were not being met in their care. And I think empathetic care goes both ways in terms of for the patients as well as for nurses and healthcare providers who are working in systems and structures that may be more limiting in these aspects. And in the context of machine learning and artificial intelligence, it'll be more important than ever for nurses to articulate our nursing standpoint and to not lose sight of that there's a person behind the disease and a person behind the number. Thank you. And just wanted to open up for some questions and discussions of many of these topics that and projects that I've been that I've highlighted.
You could put a question in the chat, or if you want to just speak up, that's fine too.
It's Tanya Davis. I want to thank you very much. It was very informative. I found it very interesting, your use of the ESAS. I have been using that tool for many, many years. And this is kind of the first time I've seen it contextualized in a research study where we can see how it's very useful. Like we know it's a useful tool, but it's another thing to have you come and go through the tool and say, and now this is why we need to use it, because we need to humanize this experience people are going through while sick, and in this case with cancer. So I found it very informative. Thank you. And I look forward to more research and your dissemination of this information.
Yeah, yes. Thanks so much for, this question. Yeah, I think, humanizing, the data and numbers is really important because I think patient-reported data, like the philosophy and behind that was really to get patient perspectives and getting them involved. But, like I think we need to have more information in terms of, what does it mean for patients when they're, they're same, if they have same level of some score, if they're decreasing or going over, like they could have different meaning for patients. And I think we need to highlight what that means for the patient and how we can use that information for individualizing care, which is not necessarily shown at the back end when we are analyzing these data with these machine learning algorithms, because there's only so much that numbers can tell us. So thanks for highlighting that.
Do you see the question from Charisse there, Jaeyoung?
Yeah. Yes. I think there's a few, like Jennifer Larson was saying that I think I needed a primer about machine learning prior to coming, but thank you. Yeah. So machine learning, yeah, there's a whole area in terms of like getting familiar with machine learning, and a lot of times what the issue is that when these machine learning gets implemented in practice, not all, like even the best performing machine learning doesn't get implemented because it's hard to explain to clinicians like how these algorithms work in practice. So oftentimes it's really basic regression analysis that's applied. But I think I did a few analysis on different types of machine learning and comparing it to very basic regression analysis. And even the most complex algorithms provide very little performance improvements compared to the basic level. It's because of the type of data that's available in a lot of the registry data. So I think it's also about improving the quality of the data and at the outset that helps to provide more and more improvements in these algorithms. But yeah, there's a whole section on that was a bit beyond the scope of this presentation, but yeah, there's a lot of sections on if you want to get more involved with the analysis and learning about the machine learning algorithms. And then Sherry is saying, were your workshops and interviews recorded and themed afterwards to create personas and journey by the researcher, or did participants co-create the persona journey with you? Yeah, that's a great question. So the interviews were recorded, and then what happened was that so we created these themes based on the interview data, and then we also had we also presented these personas to the participant to see what they needed to be changed. So it was a bit of back and forth between the participants and how these personas were created. And all the participants did say that it accurately represented their experience. So that's how we created these personas and journey maps. So thanks for that question. But it is a very iterative process in terms of how we've developed them from the beginning to the final personas.
There's another question there. Do you see that, Jaeyoung?
Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Could you describe the structure of your research, in particular in working with unsupervised machine learning, accessing Ontario Cancer Registry data? What challenges did you face and what lessons were learned? Yeah. Particularly in working with unsupervised machine learning. Yeah. And accessing the Ontario Cancer Registry data. Yeah. So for the first project, in analysis of machine learning, that was part of the larger team where we were able to access the Ontario Cancer Registry, and there was a series of analysis that were done based on that registry data. I think they don't in the current they don't allow access anymore. I think there's a lot of because of COVID. I think there was reduced staff, so they don't have allow access. I think they temporarily have access that were limiting. But I think that I think I was part of a larger team where I created where I analyzed I took up one of the questions that was to be analyzed for that for the data. So it was yeah, so that was part of a team, kind of a research team that I was involved with. But did you have specific questions about the machine learning analysis that was done?
Hi, this is Abdurreza. Just wondering about the structure of your team, like what members were involved, what were their titles, and how did they contribute to the project?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Maybe I can go back to the first project, because we did publish on that here's the title. So this was part of the we was involved with so this was part of the postdoctoral fellowship that I was involved with. And then so Center for Health Evaluation Outcome Sciences is in BC, and they had it's a research center, and they were able to access the Ontario Cancer Registry. Jason Kopak is epidemiologist who is in University of British Columbia, who was he's currently retired. Jason Sutherland is also epidemiologist in the UBC. So he's a professor in that public health department. Leah Lambar, so she is in BC Cancer. She's the head of the knowledge translation department. Anis is part of the CHAOS, so he's the director for that, who helped. And Rick Sawatsky he was my co-supervisor for the postdoctoral fellowship. So I was able to access the data through that, through the CHAOS, the research center there. Does that help clarify and I did the analysis and the machine learning, and so Rick Sawatsky was the supervisor who did. We went back and forth in terms of looking at some of the analytical work. Does that help answer some of the question?
You said yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
There's another question though from a comment from Dominique.
I'm wondering how you create a dialogue between the persona and the healthcare. For example, did you use theories or evidence from research? Create the dialogue between the persona and the healthcare provider. Yeah, that's a good question. For the dialogue, it was based on some of the feedback that we received from the participants in terms of what the dialogue may look like. And what the focus could be on. So, for example, Trish, it was the focus on the overall goal was to improve quality of life. So how could what kind of dialogue may look like? And I think it was very simple in terms of if we look at some of the dialogue that have been created, it was just really about what kind of further questions that should be asked that could find out more information about the overall that we can connect with in terms of the patient goals and what kind of dialogue could help in terms of improving that, getting more information about that in alignment with that overall goal. Hope that helps. It's that theories or evidence from research. So I know there's a lot of work that has been done in cancer research and communication. So we did take some note from that. It's just that the focus more was on how we aligned some of the conversations with the goal of the patient, and it can be varying. There's so much individual variations that could also be possible. So this was just one example among many that was just highlighted. So. Yeah, so that's great comment, serious illness conversations. Yeah, so that's another thing that we could look at in terms of different examples that we all could apply in terms of the conversation. So yeah, I agree. We could have really many variations. And I think this is another area for the education in terms of how do we provide, what are some conversations that we could apply in different scenarios. And that's a big area for the education, in educating the next generation of nurses in terms of how we communicate when patients are reporting certain, some serious illness, in moving forward. Yeah, we could probably touch, at certain point offline in terms of, different ways of communicating. And we could certainly add that to the, the current learning module or the different persona journey maps that are being created. Yeah.
So, Jae-Young, the very early there, can you please provide the website you showed in the video? I think that was that first video you showed. Is there a link? Could you put a link in that? I think people would like the link.
Yes, that's a good point. So there's the in the learning module, I have that's where all even the video was included. So maybe I can include the link to the learning module, because you can also have resources of other personas, and also the video that is included in this learning module. So I've included in the chat, so hopefully you can access that as well.
And you see Dominique's other comment there about appreciating a paper of yours.
Yeah, interpretation and use of patient report outcomes to fill out as well. Yes, yeah. So that's the so we try to make it so that it's we do want to look more critically about the patient prompts data, because from a hermeneutic approach, because that's where if you look at the philosophy, the history of hermeneutics, it's more of a where the same different priests have been interpreting the same text differently because of the different backgrounds that people have. Their training and their experiences are all influencing the different interpretation of that same text. And I think that this is important because even with the same PROMS data, same questionnaire, and even if they respond in the same, patients are responding in the same way, it may have very different meaning. The score of 2, for example, can have very different meaning for patients who may have previously been an athlete and had been no longer being active, compared to a patient who is already bedridden and is progressively declining. So that's a really good point in terms of and the importance of contextualizing these PROMS data, because it may not have the same meaning for even the same patients over time, because they may have different reference points, and they may have different backgrounds, if they may have different experiences that can over time. So I think it's being able to continuously ask questions about the data, having that critical thinking approach. Does it have the same meaning? What does it mean for the patient, and how we can better tailor, the information that we're gathering, and to individual care. So that's really the main kind of points that I've highlighted in the paper. So thanks for pointing that out.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, there.
Yeah. Yeah, these are good questions. What are the biases embedded in the machine? Yeah. I think that there's a few in the previous Kazan presentations that did touch up on some of these biases that could result. Definitely some of the the data quality issues, some of the data that's available, because we don't really know some of the so we don't really know like if some of these data like how they've been collected, and it's a bit removed from the researcher and how it's actually been collected and used. So I know as we have more and more data that's collected in healthcare, we're going to be relying more and more on these complex machine learning algorithms. And the worry is that, if we're not contextualizing these data, it's a bit more of like what is missing from this data and what kind of data that is being, what can be represented that can really reflect the patient perspective. And that's always going to be a continuous challenge. And I think personas and journey mapping try to highlight that. And what is important to the patient? What is their overall goal? And what are the challenges? And that's something that's may not be fully captured in currently. And I'm working on in the next what some of the so what is a good registry and what is possible, and some of these ideas are going to be integrated into the creation of a registry where we're going to provide a support group based on their overall goals, based on their similarities and their patient report outcome scores, and to see where we can start to provide more tailored care based on some of these scores and some of the goals that they have. So I think that's the next step in terms of trying to highlight, and this is an important step in trying to contextualize these problems data and seeing how we can integrate these into the registries that are currently being analyzed, so that we can highlight that the human and not lose sight of the person behind these numbers. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, there is another one there.
Yeah. So really asked researchers, but what programming language did you use? How was the database analysis carried out? Yeah. So I didn't want to go too much detail into the programming language and data analysis aspect, because there's a range. People want to be very detail oriented and looking at specific language, and but I did want to get just broad enough so that you get a taste of what is possible in the results. But the program language uses R and N+, and the database, and how is the database analysis carried out. So that's in the Ontario Cancer Registry data, they do have like security measures in place. So you can't really take out the data itself, but it's within the secure environment. They have their own login information, and you have to log in through that internet portal. And then they also all have these programming languages that you can use and different statistical analysis. But I think the important point is not really about the specific machine learning algorithms, because it's limited by the data that's available. But I think what we need to think about is like, what is the person, and contextualizing that is whether it's really representative of that person and what's important for that patient. Because the current registry data does not have that kind of information. Like, it has very basic in terms of the demographics, in terms of the interventions that they've had, and the outcome is mostly, and even the patient prompts data is not necessarily integrated. It's a lot of it is there's a lot of morbidity data. There's a mortality, patient visits, but it doesn't necessarily capture that the person in that. So it's a bit different ways of looking at it. That's it's a bit of different in terms of what we thought wanted to do, because we had a lot of patients' involvement, and some of the questions started to change because, like for example, focus on some of the mental health and well-being measures, because a lot of the patients were saying to us during the interviews and that their mental health needs were not being met. So we started to get people and patients to be more involved in our research and the patient partners. And then that's when we started to see, okay, so the machine learning algorithms and the registry are not necessarily fully capturing their experience. So that's when we started to take a step back and say, how do we contextualize and how do we bring out that person more in these data? So that's how the personas and journey mapping projects came about, because how do we bring out that person more so that we are more, and then where are the opportunities for nursing, because to provide that holistic care. And that's where we start to understand, that these are important work that needs to be done. And I think nursing as a profession has really, they have the really in the key area to make that, as part of our nursing, it provides more visibility to our work once we start to see that, the importance of what we're doing. I think this is a key area where, more work and that, nursing is behind this type of work could provide that kind of importance and also in helping to, advance our profession. Hope that clarifies some of that, what our underlying motivation was and where we're trying to go. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, human in the loop in this context. Yeah, this is that. Yeah, this is what we're trying to articulate. Yeah, and I think we need to have more of this type of work and integrating it with machine learning and artificial intelligence. That in terms of like what is because there's a limit to what machine learning, artificial intelligence can do, and highlighting that the human in the loop will be really critical in the next, in the next kind of many years, because there's a lot of discussions about the what it is and what is not, and once we start to articulate this, I think that's where we're going to have more traction in terms of and focus for our nursing. Thanks so much for that. Yeah. Any other
Anything
questions?
else? Hearing none, I'd like to thank you, Jae-young, for presenting, and also for everybody else who joined the webinar. Thank you very much for spending the time with us. Please note the link to recording of the session will be made available automatically to all those who are registered, and you can please feel free to share that link within your network. So Kazan, thanks you again, and we certainly hope you'll consider joining us for our next Lunch and Learn, which happens on April 18th, when Dr. Charlene Chu from the University of Toronto will present Scoping Review to Inform the Nursing Informatics Entry to Practice Competencies for Registered Nurses Update. So Kazan is updating the competencies for informatics, and so she's going to be presenting the scoping review that her team did for that project. So thank you all once again, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.